Hi guys, I'm going to be putting up a few mini lessons throughout this week to get you inspired. I have a brand new bolt of muslin from PGM. Is it PDM or PGM? I think it's PGM. Dress Forms. They have a great price on muslin. And I'm going to take a fresh piece, and the reason I'm keeping it, I didn't cut it before I got on, is to show you a few things. Some beginner things you may not know. This is the selvage edge, the edge that's like bound. So when they weave, when you go back and forth, it's where the cross grain goes back and forth. Any thread parallel to the selvage is called a length grain. Droit fil in French. That's the strongest threads in the fabric. And the ones that run down and along the bolt. And what I'm going to do, to show you one more thing, cross grain, it's also called the warp, the threads that go down. Cross grain or weft are the ones that go across. And check it out, whenever I get muslin, or any fabric, if I can, I never want them to cut my fabric at the fabric store. You see this edge? This is fabric that's been cut. But if you tear fabric, I use right hand. Even though I'm a lefty, I use right hand for scissors. If you snip and tear, your fabric will tear on a single thread, and it will look different. And that single thread is the cross grain. When you tear your fabric on a single thread, then you actually can see the length grain and the cross grain, and ideally they would be at right angles. And the reason I'm going to tear again so that I get a perfect rectangle. What does that mean? That just means, for example, there are exactly entire threads running all the way across and all the way across. Nothing's been cut through diagonally in any way. And if you've ever heard of the bias and you don't know what the bias is, so wait, let me show you. Fabric, usually we use it this way. The length grain running down. Here's my selvage, and here's my torn edges. Right? And then if you've heard of the bias and you don't know what the bias is, you just fold the left grain over the cross grain, and you get that 45-degree angle. That's the bias. Why does the bias matter? Because fabric is a grid, a firm, sturdy grid. And when you're at the 45-degree true bias, it's no longer a grid, it's a lattice. It's X's instead of crosses, and thus it becomes flexible and fluid. Sorry, the light. Because all the threads are at diagonals to each other instead of rigid and firm. Hear that? When you do this way, you don't get that. It's like, that's the bias. It is often used for, like, this is cotton, but if it was another fabric, it like cowls and things because it's drapey and fluid and drippy. Whereas straight grain won't behave the same in that situation. See how it sticks out? Bias collapses. It's more moldable and stretchy. Let's see. It's not really showing you that right now. Okay, so what I really wanted to show you, I'm sorry, once I get started, I always get all inspired in many different ways. First thing I want to show you, thing I really wanted to talk about today was flares, because I feel like circular flare is the most mysterious and happy surprise for people when they're learning fashion. I'm going to show you flares two ways. So what are flares? My dress has a flared hem, but it's not going to fit on the camera, so I'm going to just go pick up some other things. Like this dress has a lot of flares on it. Flares are, hang on, here they are. By definition, they are cones. You see? Cones of fullness. And at the top, they're completely smooth. There is no, it's hard to see maybe because there's a print on this fabric, but there are no gathers. It's totally smooth and totally full. Now, we've talked about this in some of my pattern making videos too that you may have seen, but you may not have seen them. So let me just show you one more example. This is by Prabal. You see how it's smooth, no gathers, and then you have all these little combs. And the way that we make those, really, if you lay this flat, you'll see that it's just a circle. Yeah, a flat circle. And this dress has circular flare in around the armholes too. I'll show you. Don't worry, it's gonna make more sense in a minute because fabric is always cut out as flat, right? These are called cascades. I have some videos on the net where we talk about how to draw those, but still, let me show you. I'm not sure which way I want to approach this with you. Let's do it this way. Let's say, do you see she has a little bit of a line here? Like an underwire line. Why is the light so dim? Do you see it? I could use black tape, and I didn't. Okay. So if I was going to drape flare, that's what I'll do. I'm going to start, and you're going to think this is strange. I didn't press my fabric first. Oh my gosh. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to pin. Okay, and I'm going to create flares under her bust. I don't even know if that's flattering. Let's find out. And you know what? This already, if this is center front, I've already created a flare. But watch. Okay, I want to get on the camera. If you were going to drape flares, and then I'll show you how you don't have to drape them, but you can. I taught draping for years, and we always did this circle skirt project. So you can keep straight, and then when you want to create a flare, you pin and you clip and you rotate. And as much as you rotate, you can create a very large flare or a smaller flare. It's up to you how much you put in. So I'm going to put a little bit in, and then I'm going to follow. Oh, I wanted to pin into the line under. Remember we talked about we were doing this on like kind of like an underwire line. I feel I'm going to be remaking this video. I haven't done a draping video since I made the pattern making class, which is called Pattern Making Demystified. It's on my website. If you need a link or anything, if you want to check it out, let me know. It's also part of my year of fashion class. So pattern making and draping, because I've taught draping and I've taught pattern making and I've taught sewing all at Parsons, I feel like you can't have one without the other. They're so interrelated. So there's a lot of draping in the pattern making class to kind of make sure that the concepts have like a 3D relevance. Okay, now hang on. You see these flares I'm making? Now I'm pinning again into the like underwire line. It's the first time I've ever draped with long nails. And the only reason, it's the first time I've ever had long nails. Okay. Because they're press-on. Okay, I clipped and pivoted again, yeah. I'm always clipping into that underwire line because that was my idea, was that I was going to have flares like under the bust. Like let's say it was kind of a bra top. Pinning techniques is something we also talk about in the pattern making course because there are a lot of different techniques we use for pinning for different situations. Alright, so do you see all these flares? How fun is that? But bear in mind that if this is the design, and if I do the same on the other side, I notice this flare wants to go that way. the flare from the other side is also going to want to go that way. They're going to kind of crash into each other. So that's something I want to reconsider. Maybe I'm going to make this flare smaller. Oh, I know what I can do. I can put center front on true bias instead of straight grain. Watch. And this is how we design. I mean, you can design from a sketch, or you can design on the mannequin. When you design on the mannequin without a sketch, you can let the design evolve itself as you go. So now center front is here, and this flare is directed downward rather than kicking that way. And now I see this one is kicking. So guess what? I can adjust that too by changing my design. And of course, this didn't go exactly as I planned, and I'm so glad, because I always think reality and spontaneity is more interesting. Let's see. So I'm backing up. I'm making my flares smaller, because now I'm starting to really feel my way into this design. And I'm willing to be open-minded every step of the way. But whenever I clip towards the pin, I try to clip at a right angle to whatever the seam line would be. And I always bear in mind that I'm trying not to clip too far if I'm still exploring. I may want to be like a little bit, holding back just a little bit in my clipping, because if you clip too far, it's hard to back up. And pin again. And clip. Now there's a lot going on with the pinning that you're not noticing. Which direction I pin in, how far I push the pin in, stuff like that. Pinning techniques to me is super important. You will develop your pinning techniques through experience over time, but at the same time, it's good to have some awarenesses that help you know how you want to pin in any particular situation that's going to help you. And that's something we always can talk about when draping together on a video call or in a classroom. And then I also teach it quite a bit in the pattern making class. Okay, and you know what? Alright, I'm going to do just a little, I guess I'll keep the flare going. Now, as I'm creating these flares, you see how I have this square shape? Because the edges at the bottom are all straight grain from when I tore the fabric. Well, bear in mind, I can bear in mind based on let's say I was working from a sketch or something, like this doesn't have to be long. This ruffle could be just an inch long or 2 inches long parallel, or it could be short at the front, getting longer out to the side. I get to decide all of that. It's up to me. This is the beautiful creative art of draping and design, and designing through draping. You can drape from a sketch or a photo, but make sure to allow yourself the pleasure. But also you can design from draping on your mannequin. And mannequins are quite affordable and like free shipping and all this stuff now. So you could really have one. It's not inaccessible. I decided, since it's so close, I'm going to put my side seam on straight grain, because it's almost straight grain anyway. So, I don't know. I like things that wrap up. So that's just a choice I'm making. Doesn't have to be on straight grain. But let's say this were a stripe or something. If the front and back both meet at straight grain, then the stripe would be matching front to back. Oh my gosh, you guys. I was just doing a demo, but now I'm getting all kinds of ideas for a top or a dress. And I don't want to cut yet. My lights are almost like too intense. How many flares do I have? 1, 2, 3, for when I flatten this out on paper, it's going to have like a donut shape. Even if this line were straight, FLARES give you, when you're done with them and you lay them flat, this edge is curved. Now we just created, let me just play with the light. Okay, there, that's the best way to see. And I can bring my camera a little closer to show you the clips and pins. The light. Right? Okay, so it's like pin, 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 and there's a clip at each pin. So that this, if I make this dress, there's actually no gathering whatsoever along this line. There is only smoothness. The fullness is below. And I get to choose. I'm going to do this only so you can feel it. Like, I like this being long. And if I was wearing it, I would also want it to be long because of my body type. This is true bias at center front, which means that if I could have a piece that was big enough, maybe I wouldn't need a seam at all at center front. I will mark center front along the line on my mannequin. I'll mark waist. I'll mark center front bust. And I'll mark this line with dots where I have pinned to reflect that underwire line that's on this mannequin. This mannequin has that, not all mannequins do. But the thing is, this whole seam is stretchy because it's not on straight grain. It's also on bias. So when I'm sewing it, it could very easily stretch. So it's important to put like a mark at the beginning, a mark in the middle, and a mark at the side seam, so that when I'm attaching this piece to like the bra cup or the halter top or whatever's there, I have like a match mark where like there's a notch here and maybe a seam here, and I know where they meet each other. Because stretchy things, all of a sudden you could find that this seam, this piece of fabric feels longer than the bra cup that you already made, and you can't fit them together. But if you know where the centers meet, you can manipulate and pin and sew so that this fits on. It fits now. Sometimes after you cut out your fabric, it stretches, particularly along the bias. Okay, so if I wanted this to be shorter, I can just draw with a pencil. I could just cut and measure, do it by eye. But one thing I do encourage students to do is to sketch with their pins, just because it's a great skill. So if you want, before cutting, you could play with, if I was doing this myself, I'd be walking away and coming close so I could see it from a distance. But right now, I just want you guys to see in the phone. You see how I'm sketching a line? This pin, and you see how uneven it is? If I want, once I've sketched it, I can adjust and adjust and adjust. You got to start with something, right? So what I do is I point one pin to the next to get a flowing line. Yeah. Okay. And then, if I like it, just to make a point, like I have this beautiful long shirt, and honestly, this is probably what I want to wear. Honestly. But because this is just a demonstration, I want to show you if I can cut. And it's good to leave room for seam allowance. If, let's say, if I was going to self-face this and I needed to stitch it to itself, or if I'm still making adjustments, I can leave some excess. I haven't marked. I think I'm going to mark. Ooh, I want to make sure I use a pencil. Center front intersecting this bust. I just make a little crisscross, make a few dots down center front, and I can label it center front because by the time I take this down, it may not be so obvious anymore. Side seam, I'm also going to do a crisscross where side seam intersects with the bra cup line, and I go, like I said, I'm going to put a notch where it matches the princess theme dart, and then I'm twisting to make little dots. That's the most precise, tiny, clean marking I can possibly make on my drapes. So whenever I can, oops, make sure you're actually marking the seam on the mannequin and not something else. And now notice, because of gravity, when this becomes shorter, it also behaves differently. So I'm moving my lights because the lights play differently. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cones. And then I'm going to take it down. And like I said, this could be longer, this could be uneven, this could be shorter. This could be over another shirt. Could be with, I'm going to decide what I want to design up here. But what I wanted to show you was the flare, and now I'm going to take the flare down. And to be honest, I usually do flares on a waist, like a circular skirt. I've never done them under the bust before. In the moment, I can take this and think and play, like, how would that look on me? And my light is a little too strong. But this is the circular flare. And this is raw and rough, yes. I didn't press it first, and when I get to the table and I put this flat on the table and look at it, I can take my pencil and make sweeping, clean curves if I prefer. Like anything that I look at this and it feels like this one that's kicking out, maybe I'm going to blend that smoother. But it's up to me. And this whole area where the line is straight, that's actually, yeah, I don't like how this curve suddenly hits a straight line, but I can take my pencil or French curve, I don't use French curve, and just make it one sweeping beautiful line where the straight blends into the curve. And now I have, after I make those corrections, I'm not going to do that now because this is like a super quick sort of masterclass vibe where I just wanted to introduce you to the kinds of concepts you can learn in year of fashion, even if you're only learning illustration. Actually, I just thought of this. I can tuck my clippings inside. You can see it cleaner. Just even understanding the processes, understanding fabric, understanding the foundations and elements of fashion puts you in the know. Like, there's so much you can talk about when now you know what a flare is. Now you know why it's called circular, or maybe you don't. But do you see how we have like a half of a circle here? That's what's called circular flare. And when you pull it straight, you get a straight line at the top, smooth, no gathers, and all the fullness at the bottom. Depending what fabric it is, it's going to move more or less. Depending how long it is, it's going to have more or less weight. Been teaching fashion design for 25 years. I started being a student in 92, 91, and it never gets old. It's so never ending. Loving fashion, the journey of fashion on all levels. So whether it's techie, like in my class, what I would do with this is press it, put it on the table, and you'll see how I smooth the lines, how I correct the lines, how I create other pattern pieces to go together with it. In a drawing class, I would be talking to you about how to draw the shadows, how to, how the shading works, how the lines work if I was drawing this on a dress. But it's not even just about the tech, and it's not just about the sketching, because then when you have those skills, you're telling stories, you're carrying messages, you're engaging in the satisfaction of making with your hands, and your eyes, and your heart, and your mind, and you're engaging with the magic the magic of creativity, the magic of the universe. That's why for me it's soulful and it's sacred to create fashion. Doesn't have to be superficial at all. That's what we get from the media. But adornment and making, creating, and engaging with the magic of inspiration, processes, the laws of time, when time disappears and you're in a flow of creating something and beauty and truth are leading the way. This is all part of your good life. And it's like a meditation. It's engaging with the powers that be in a focused way. So it really is a meditation to me. It's a beautiful place to be. Do you really want to be like the head of Calvin Klein? Is that going to bring you the joy you want? Maybe. Maybe you want to know everything you can about fashion. You want to know what you're capable of, what you can make, who you are, what you can discover, what you thought you couldn't do, and then you realize you can. And this already got long, so I'm going to stop. It was totally impromptu, totally casual. My hair's still wet. It's like 100 degrees outside. I hope it served you. If it did, let me know. Share it with a friend. Like, subscribe, whatever you want. And I also want to make sure that you know that Year of Fashion, very unique offering, is open just now. It's going to run from July to July. Get open access to all of my courses for that year. And every month, plus once at the beginning and once at the end, you're going to get a one-to-one video call with me. If you don't schedule it that month, you will lose the one that month. But you get them up to all of those. All you have to do is schedule once a month, and we can work through anything that comes up in your coursework. It could be model drawing, it could be illustration, it could be much more like inner critic, perfectionist stuff. It could be, I need resources, where do I research this, where do I buy that. It could be, I'm making this dress, I've got the design, I don't know how to finish the edges. So it could be anything. It could be, I already went to fashion school, I'm relearning these things with you, I'm going deeper, and I'm creating a portfolio. Can you look at my group of sketches and give me some feedback? Where can I grow? What do I need? I'm not sure if this is good, or anything. Anyway, this is my joy. This is what I love to do. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you soon. Stay tuned because there's going to be some more of those masterclasses throughout this month. Bye.